All right, here is our video for X and Y intercepts. The intercepts of a graph are where the graph crosses the x-axis and the y-axis. We can find the intercepts graphically and algebraically. Finding intercepts graphically means finding the points where the graph crosses both axes. And that just means from a graph that you're given. Finding the intercepts algebraically means plugging in 0 for one of the variables and then solving for the other. Sometimes this will require us to factor so we can solve for x. So on the front of this page, we will be doing graphically finding the intercepts. So here's an example. The x-intercepts are where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So here's my parabola. And it crosses the x-axis in two places. And we want to write these as ordered pairs. Let's take a quick second and review ordered pairs. These are written x comma y, where x is the left and right direction that you have to travel to get to your point, and y is the up and down direction that you have to travel to get to your point. And what I mean by that is when you start at 0, 0, so here's my origin, how far do you have to go left and right or up and down to get to your point? So let's say I'm trying to get to this point first. From here, I have to go left, which is the negative direction, and it's 0.5. Because see, it skips, it goes 0.51, 1.52. So I go left 0.5, and I do not have to go up and down at all. So my x coordinate is that left direction of negative 0.5. My y value is how far did I have to go up or down, and I didn't have to go any. So my y value is 0. Now for this point, I go back to 0, 0, and I have to go to the right this time, 2.5 spaces. And then I don't have to go up or down at all, so that means my vertical direction or my y direction was 0. Now for the y-intercept is right here where the parabola crosses the y-axis. So I need to find the left-right direction and the up-down direction to get there. So I go back to my 0, 0. I don't have to go left or right at all to get to that point. So my x-coordinate is 0. But I do have to travel up to get there. So that's the positive direction, and it's positive 1. So I want you to pause the video and do these 3 problems down at the bottom. All right, here are my answers. So take a minute, pause the video if you have to check your ordered pairs. All right, one thing I want you to notice here is, and it's a piece of information we're going to use for the next section. For every x-intercept, I want you to notice that all the y values are 0. That's because we did not have to travel up or down in the y direction to get the points that are the x-intercepts on the x-axis. The opposite is true for my y-intercepts. The x's are all 0 here. That's because for the y-intercept, we didn't have to go in the left or right direction at all. So for the x-intercepts, all the y's are 0, and for the y-intercept, all the x's are 0. Now keep that in mind when we look at this next table. These are the steps for finding your intercepts algebraically, meaning you don't have a picture, you only have an equation, and you're going to use math to find your x and y intercepts. Here's how the x-intercept starts. You're going to plug 0 in for y. That's because we know that y is always 0 for an x-intercept. For a y-intercept, we're going to plug 0 in for x because we know for y-intercepts the x value is always 0. And we're going to do this for 3 types of equations. This first type of equation is already factored. So I'm going to do all the we try problems and leave you to do the you try problems by yourself, and you can check your answers with the PDF in your Google Classroom. All right, so here's our first step for finding the x-intercepts. Plug 0 in for y. So here's my equation. I'm going to put 0 for y. So this is my work for finding the x-intercepts. The next step is to factor. In this equation, it's already factored. X plus 1 is a factor, x minus 5 is a factor. So we skip to step 3, the zero factor property. Individually set each factor equal to 0 and solve. This is a skill we did in the last unit where we were solving quadratics. So we solve for our x's. Now in the last unit, we just boxed our answers here. But this time we're going to do something different. Write your answers as ordered pairs. So -1, 0, 5, 0. These were the -1 and 5 are my x values, and we put 0 in for y. So I'm going to graph those right now. -1, 0, and 5, 0. So there are my x-intercepts, but I want to find my y-intercept now too. So I go back up here. For the y-intercepts, we are going to use our original equation, and we're going to plug 0 in for x, solve for y, and then write it as an ordered pair. So for my y-intercepts, I'm going to put 0 wherever I see an x. Now remember our order of operations, PEMDAS, says to do parentheses first. So I'm going to do that here. 0 plus 1 is 1. 0 times -5 is -5. I don't have any exponents to take care of, but I do have multiplication. 1 times -5 is -5. So y is -5 when x is 0. So here's my ordered pair, and then I'm going to graph it. And I'm going to just connect these and make some kind of parabola. We have this note here, all parabolas will open upward, meaning they're going to point up. So I don't really know where it's going to turn around before it goes back up. We'll talk about that next week. For right now, we're just doing a basic graph. There we go. And I'm going to let you try this one by yourself on your own. All right, let's look at the next problem type. We're going to be following these same steps over here. And you'll notice this one's not already factored. So we're going to have to end up doing that ourselves. So for x-intercept, we start by putting 0 in for the y. Now I'm going to factor that side, what multiplies to the last term and adds to the middle, and it's 2 and 5. Set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve. I'm going to just skip a couple of steps and go straight to the answers. This one gives me x equals -2, this one -5. I want to write them as ordered pairs because we are practicing that skill. And then I'm going to graph them. And now I find my y-intercept. For the y-intercept, you go back to your original equation, and now you put 0 in for the x's. So there's my substitution step. 0 squared is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. That just leaves me 10 equals y. So when x is 0, y is 10. And then we just draw a parabola through those that opens upwards. Again, we don't know exactly where this turnaround point is, but that's something we're going to talk about next week. And then you do number 7, this one, on your own. Check with the PDF in your Google Classroom. And we have one more problem on the back to do. Now this one looks like a slide and divide. And if you think about that for a second, that would be pretty big numbers, and it's not impossible. But here's what we're going to do to make this easier for us. Notice that there's a GCF of 6 here. So I'm just going to divide that out. I'm not getting rid of the 6. I'm just going to divide it and put it in front as a GCF. And now I'm going to follow my steps from here. You can see this is going to be easier to factor now that the A value is 1. So for my x-intercepts, I start by letting y equal 0. I'm going to factor that trinomial, what multiplies to -4 and adds to -3, and it's -4, +1. I solve these factors. Imagine that I set them equal to 0 and then moved them over to the other side. You don't have to worry about the 6. It doesn't have an x with it, so it doesn't represent a solution. Here are my ordered pairs, and I'm going to graph. Now my y-intercepts are where I let x equal 0. I like using standard form for this, but you could use this step or this step as well and let the 0 be substituted for the x. So here these all cancel because we're multiplying by 0, and that leaves me -24 for y. So x is 0, y is -24. That's somewhere down here. And then we just draw in our parabola. And we're done. I'm going to have you finish that last problem 9 on your own and check with the answers in your Google Classroom.